By now, you're probably used to seeing a lot of Sprinter Jaycos, something a little bit different. An Avida Jayco, very similar internal installation. This is a 2021, 2022 model with the lift bed and the shower. It's a long wheelbase Sprinter. The customer's just got the original Avida Victron system, which was rubbish and not compliant. Battery box was not sealed at all. Had 240 amp hours of lithium, 30 amps of DC charge, 20 amps of solar. Rubbish. So, what we've done, 800 amp hours of lithium power now in the van, 100 amps of DC charge off the alternator. We've managed to fit with our new Element 3 solar range, 3 130 watt panels on the roof, plus another 80 watter. So that gets us to a total of 470 watts on the roof. So they've got a 50 amp solar controller looking after the roof array, and then we've got an Anderson plug that's been redone just because it was rubbish and rusted, which is now the original 20 amp solar controller is just doing their blanket input now. So from 240 amp hours to 800, from 30 amps of DC charge to 100 amps of DC charge, from 20 amps of solar to up to 70 if you maxed out both controllers, for instance. And before was just the multi-plus control and a battery monitor. Now we've got the full Victron servo screen up here, retrofitted onto this little leather control panel that Avida do. We've also added in a Starlink as well. So yeah, full retrofitted onto the leather, which is quite nice. So, like I just said, we've got the two 50 amp DC chargers. We've got 50 solar looking after the roof, 20 solar looking after the ground array. And then we've gone from the 2 kVA multi-plus to the 3 kVA, and you've got all your control obviously through the screen for that. So 3 kVA multi-plus in the same spot where the 2 kVA was. The battery box is now actually fully sealed because it was not fully sealed before. Both through that lid and the holes on the side were not fully airtight sealed, so it was not compliant. Before, you would have just had a 30 amp charger and a 20 amp charger. That area in there was actually all just empty. Pull the door down, you got like a fuse panel, which is all factory Avida. You got a 240 circuit breaker box, which we've adjusted, and then the rest of the stuff's all just factory Avida fit out. Obviously, we've got RCBOs and their input and output for both sides of the multi-plus. 50 amp DC chargers run a new and extra 16mm twin to the starter battery up the front. That was the original solar controller. We use that for the ground array, 50 amp solar controller for the roof array, and then solar circuit breaker for the roof, as well as all your fusing on the roof as per your AS3001. Servo down the bottom with everything plugged into it. Fuse, an extra new fuse panel for all of our servo system bits and pieces. You've also got a little temperature sensor, which you can see just off to the left of this DC charger. That is plugged into the servo, which is controlling our cooling system in here. So we had one fan originally, was just ignition controlled. Now we've got one fan, 2 fan, that's an outlet fan. We've got another fan that's sucking air that way through here. We've got another vent underneath the solar circuit breaker. And then you've got another inlet here with no fan just because it wouldn't fit. But all this cooling system is controlled off the temperature sensor behind the DC charger, so it's in a good spot. And you got inlet air here. You've got another vent under there, a fan here sucking air that way, and then 2 fans here sucking air both out, and then the multi-pluses fan will push air that way to come out. So you're gonna have a nice air cooling system of inlet and outlet through this electrical cabinet. 300 amp circuit breaker, manual reset circuit breaker, okay, for the multi-plus. And then the batteries, like I said, are in here. We were gonna have to modify the cabinetry, but it was actually better for us to modify the batteries to make them fit. So it's got 800 amp hours in there. rather than modifying the cabinetry, just because you got 2 gas bottles there and they would have lost one of the gas bottles. Yes, essentially you could go just delete the gas bottles altogether now, because you've got 800 amp hours and a 3000 watt inverter, so you can just pretty much be full electric, whether that's hot water or gas cooking. But these guys are still going to use their gas, so we didn't want to delete one of their gas bottles for them. Or you obviously could have gone the smaller gas bottles, because I think they've got the 9 kilo gas bottles in there. So that is the retrofitted system. We're going to show you a couple of things now. We're going to start the car, and you can see at the moment we're getting 230 odd watts in of solar. I'll show you the solar on the roof in a moment. And you can see we're getting 49 amps in from each of the DC chargers. So 50 amps in, 49 amps out, 680 watts we're transferring at, which is fantastic. So we're driving along with the DC chargers and the solar coming in, charging at a combined 105 amps, which is heaps. If I turned all of our DC 12 volt off, that wattage down there will decrease. We're up to 110 amps. If I turn the inverter off, we get up to about 112 amps. Now, keep in mind, when you plug into mains power into our 240 shore power on the outside of the van, the multiplus will charge it up to 120 amps. By the time it does the conversion rate and conversion losses, you're at about 110 amps, which is 2400 watts at 240 volt power. So we're charging at 110 amps here. So that's actually the same as being essentially hooked up to a 3000 or 3 kVA generator. So you turn the car on, you're essentially, with this solar and DC charger setup, you're a 3 kVA generator on wheels driving down the road. Now with the DC, double DC charger, you have to hook up the ignition wire. So they're on at the moment. As soon as I turn engine off, we look back up here and those DC chargers have turned off instantly, which means we're not going to run any risk of draining our starter battery. Okay, beautiful setup, works well. Starlink switch is obviously not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's there and it works. I understand some people will say that looks ugly, but this is sort of the best you can get in the situation available to us with space and whatnot. Whole vehicle now, whether it's power points, aircon, microwave, fully off grid. Like I said, if they wanted to delete the gas because, you know, they're getting tight weight wise, you can just pretty much go all electric, induction cooker, hot water system. It's just, you've got an endless amount of power now. So whole system's off grid. When you plug into mains power, it'll charge up at roughly 110 amps, 120 in ideal scenarios, but we don't see it much in Australia because we don't actually have the infrastructure. Like the Multiplus has a 32 amp transfer switch, which in Australia you're never really going to make use of at all unless you're on a very big like commercial site somewhere. 10 amp, 15 amps the max you're really going to see in Australia. So the Multipluses are over-engineered for our conditions, I guess you could say. Solar Anderson plug, it's just down here at the rear. Got a nice little label on it. Solar ground array, okay. Brand new Anderson plug because the other one was quite rusty. At the rear of the van, nothing has really changed. And then we get up onto the roof, and this is where we've worked a fair bit of magic. So long wheelbase Sprinter. We've got 470 watts up here, 130 watts, 130 watts, 130 watts, 80 watts. And these are our new Element 3 solar panels. And usually you'd have 1, 2, 3 solar panels would be a certain voltage, and then this solar panel would be another voltage, and you don't get the full 100% efficiency. The way I've designed these panels is to be the exact same voltage across all of them. So all these panels are wired in parallel just because in series they get to 105 volts, which is too much for the solar controller. So they're just at a 22 volt parallel wiring. So you've got 470 watts plus a shower fan, plus a max air fan, plus the aircon, plus a Starlink Mini, which you've also done, I'll show that in a sec, and an antenna, and the awning on a long wheelbase spinner roof, which is pretty ridiculous. You won't find a Sprinter with that amount of stuff on the roof with the same amount of solar that we've got going on here. Okay, so very handy bits of kit, these new solar panels, and very handy for installers that You know, the customer doesn't want to pay the extra money, especially on, like, say, a caravan, to run extra solar to the roof, another solar circuit. You can just do everything in one circuit. We got 6 panels and they're all the exact same voltage. With the mounting of these, just one mechanical fixing per bracket, purely just because we don't want to go through any cables and whatnot on the inside, and then an adhesive sealant, which is marine grade sealant. It's mold resistant and all that good stuff. We've used it on the caravans, mounting solar panels for the last 2 years, never had a problem. You got your 240 inlet here. Now, some people are like, why do you have 2 AC input circuit breakers? It's because the way that the thing was wired originally, there's one power point that was on the input only side, which would have been outside of our input protection inside, just with the way it was configured, the wiring. So that's why we added the AC input circuit breaker inside to protect this extra power point. Now, Starlink Mini, it is a 30 volt DC converter circuit. So that switch gives you 30 volt output here. Again, this is one of our little Element 3 pod mount products, and you just got to then use a 1 meter male to male cable and our Element 3 magnetic mount. There's absolutely no chance that magnetic mount is going to fall off the roof. I'm moving the whole car doing that, all right? The mount has got rubber feet, so it doesn't damage the roof. And then, like I said, you've just got a 30 volt socket with a outlet socket there, 30 volt through the converter, through that switch inside that Starlink switch. So you just turn it on and off as you need, leave it up here. If anyone can actually get onto the roof to grab the thing, they can have it, okay? Very simple setup. If you need to take it off the roof, you get home, grab a ladder, jump up, pull the magnets off, and you can use it at home, for example. But yeah, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them. But that was the massive Avida Sprinter upgrade, which is going to give these guys endless power, and the vehicle's now compliant, which it was not before, and it was brand new from factory. Something that we see all too much of, and at the end of the day, if something does go wrong, unfortunately it's the consumer that's liable because they haven't done their due diligence on the vehicle being compliant for the Australian AS3001 Australian standards. But yeah, hope you enjoyed. If you've got any questions, let us know. These guys got power for days.